introduce you to Lisa, who basically I have known for 10 years, maybe from days in Harrods, if not
About
before.
10 years.
Yeah, I was a fashion blogger, and I think I met you on the scene, and we were both working in London. And Lisa was the head of social media for Harrods, which is one of the most famous luxury fashion retailers in the world. And I'll just let Lisa talk to you guys a bit about her history in social, how she got Harrods to 1 million followers, what, and just, yeah, so yeah, over to you.
Hey, hi guys, hope you're all well. It's actually about 9:30 in the morning here. I'm in the UK, so I'm on a different time zone. So I think Betty's got wine, I've got hot Vimto. So yeah, good morning, hope you're all well. Yeah, so my name is Hstl&Hrt. I work as a social media strategist and consulting for various companies, various different brands, small, medium and large. I've actually been in social media for just over around 10 years. And how I actually got started was, in a previous life, I actually used to work as a fashion stylist, and I was self-employed, and I needed a way to promote myself. I couldn't afford PR or anything like that. I just didn't have any money. So I had a bit of IT knowledge. So I built myself a website. I set myself up a Facebook page, and I set myself up a Twitter account, because when I started, believe it or not, Instagram didn't actually exist. And I basically started promoting my styling services on social media. And that gained me some traction in terms of getting clients. But then people started asking me what I was doing on Twitter, what I was doing on Facebook, and I just started giving out bits of advice for free, because I was kind of learning myself. And as time went on, I started to get more inquiries about social media advice than I was about styling, which kind of worked quite well for me, because I wasn't really into the styling. I like shopping for myself. I learned that I don't really like shopping and dressing with the people. But anyway, so I started doing more of that. And then I happened to, when I was working as a stylist, I was also working in a department store, which was where I met one of the directors at Harrods. I served her on the shop floor. She gave me her business page, and we just kept in touch.
You guys
And
put your mics on mute, sorry.
that's all right. So then when I would go to London to do bits of styling work, I would meet up with her for a coffee and a chat. Anyway, to cut a long story short, she agreed to introduce me to people in London. And I, at the time, was in Manchester. I took her up on her offer. I went in and had a few interviews and meetings at Harrods. They offered me a buying job, a junior buying role. I knew that wasn't my thing. I didn't have the first clue about buying. So I went back and said, I really appreciate the offer, but I think I could add more value from a social media point of view. Now, at this point, I'm going to be honest, I was just being a bit cheeky. I thought, you know what, I would love to work for the brand. I've been working on my own social media. And to be honest, I had been monitoring their social media for quite some time. And at the time, I think on Twitter, they were only like 1,500 followers ahead of me, which seemed very odd, because they're the world's most famous luxury department store. So I went back and said, look, I think I could maybe add value from a social media point of view, not thinking anything would come of it. They asked me to put a proposal together. I put a 4-page proposal together, which I still have somewhere. And I think, I hate to admit this, but I think it's got some spelling mistakes in it. I was looking at it the other day. Anyway, so I put this together. I sent it to them. I didn't think anything of it, because to be perfectly transparent and honest, I thought they would give it to a big agency. They're never going to give it to little Lisa from Didsbury in Manchester. I thought, you know what, I'll send it, see what happens. Anyway, I think maybe a week or two went by. I got invited in for interviews. And to give you an idea of how long the process took, I went for my first meeting in January 2010. I didn't start working for them until September 2010. So it took a long time. And then when I did start, I got a 3-month contract initially. So I figured, you know what, this opportunity may never come again. So I'm just going to take it and run with it. So I literally moved to London on the 31st of August, and I started at Harrods on the 1st of September. So I literally moved the day before I started working for them. And when I joined, I mean, it was a really daunting thing. I'm not going to pretend that it was, you know, I was absolutely petrified. You know, I'd taken on this task. And if I'm being honest, I didn't have a set strategy in my mind. I kind of just went in and thought, right, I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to see what happened. And the first, I would say 3-4 months, we had like Facebook and Twitter. I spent listening to conversations. Sorry. If somebody got their mic on, I think somebody might have their mic on.
Yeah, I just turned it on mute.
Okay, and so I spent the first, I'd say 3-4 months just really listening to conversations, seeing what was going on, seeing what was out there. And the way I did it was I basically just started, I just used the channels and just started being social. That's it. I know that sounds really simple and probably a little bit silly, but that's what I did, because when I joined, they didn't really engage with anybody, they didn't really talk to anybody. And that's the whole point of me. It's called social media. The whole point is to engage, is to build relationships, and for people to develop a relationship with you and your brand. So that's what I started doing. And then in the space of, so I started in September, and in the space of, by Christmas, by December, they had over 10,000 Twitter followers. When I joined, I think it was just under 4,000. And then when we fast forward to Instagram, we didn't actually set the Instagram up till, I think it was October 2011. And I had to put a business case forward for setting up this channel. And like, I think that I made this bold prediction that I never realized would actually come true. I said, I think Instagram one day will be the lead channel, and I think we should be jumping on this now. So they approved it, we started it. And when we started, we would focus on the building and aspects of the building, because whenever we found, whenever we posted pictures of the building itself, or whatever, the actual aspects of the actual building, that really spiked our growth. So we started doing that, and we grew very, very quickly. So we, on a bad day, we were acquiring like 1,000 followers a day, which I know sounds really, and it was all organic. There was no paid strategy. There was nothing like that. It was all organic growth, and it just grew massively. But this was back in the day before algorithms and stuff like that. So it grew massively, and it just kept growing. And then a couple of years ago, obviously the introduction of algorithms, the growth started to slow down. So then we had to really start working hard to kind of grow that, to continue to grow the channels. And then I think it was January 2017, we hit 1 million followers. Now, we started the account in October 2011. So it took us over 6 years to get that following, and that was all organic. There was nothing paid. There was nothing about, we did ads here and there, but we had a policy of not buying followers, not buying engagement, anything like that. Everything was organically grown. And I think one of the things I really want to stress today is growing an engaged audience takes time. Harrods is the most famous luxury department store in the world, and it still took us over 6 years to grow that following. I know nowadays everybody's very keen to grow as quickly as possible, and yeah, you can buy followers and you can buy engagement, but an engaged audience is that. So I would rather have 1,000 engaged followers than 10,000 just random followers. Because ultimately you want this to impact your business in a positive way. And if you're just buying followers and these people aren't really in tune with your brand, or they are brand advocates, they're not going to add any value to your business. So I would say is, don't be too hasty in terms of wanting to grow your following. I would much rather have 1,000 followers, engaged followers who support my brand, who will buy into my product, than 10,000 followers who are just vanity followers. That's really, really important.
And do you think as well, hi to all of our new people that have come in, thank you for joining us. Lisa was just talking to us about her history in Harrods and her social media journey, and how with Harrods it took 6 bloody years to grow to 1 million followers. And 1 million is huge, but for some 1,000 is huge. And the whole point is it's really going after the quality, not quantity, the micro, they're not macro. There's a reason that brands are going after micro influencers now, because there's just a lot more loyalty and engagement that comes with it. And Lisa, what do you think people should be doing now? Because obviously, like, are all the rules out? Like, how do we even handle social media in a time where the world is, excuse my French, I'm gonna say it's fucked up beyond belief. Like, none of us know what's going on. What should we be saying as brands right now? What should we be doing?
I think, first off, we have to understand and we have to realize that we are in unprecedented times. Like, this has certainly never happened in my lifetime and many other people's. So I think that's the first thing. I think it's very important that you should stay social and not be silent, whatever that looks like for you. If it's posting once a day, a couple of times a week, posting every day, I think as a brand, it's very, very important that you maintain some visibility on social media, but that visibility needs to be what you're comfortable with and what works for your business. If it's not appropriate for you to post every day, or you don't want to post every day, you don't have to. But I would say that it's important to maintain a social media presence, whilst, you know, a lot of businesses have physical stores, they have physical spaces. They're all closed now, so it's important that you are active on social media. But I do think you need to proceed with caution. For my clients, what I have done is I have paused a lot of the scheduled content, because the situation that we find ourselves in is ever changing. It changes by the hour sometimes. You know, hundreds of people, thousands of people the world over are dying every single day. So it's not appropriate to just be scheduling content and just posting stuff out there. What I tend to do, what I'm doing at the moment, is I'm looking at content on a daily basis and saying, right, is this appropriate to share? And if it is, I will wait. I'll do things like, I know it might sound a bit silly, but I'll do things like, I'll watch the news for updates to see what the general sentiment and general feeling is across social media. If it is really somber and really negative, and I think that post might not quite work, I might delay it or post something else. So I think what you need to be doing is being quite reactive to the environment and to the situation and to what's happening at the moment. That's not to say that you shouldn't post about your business or your brand or your product, but I think you need to err on the side of caution. You need to make sure that your tone of voice is appropriate. Obviously, you're a business and you're in the business of selling, but it needs to be in an appropriate way at this time. What you don't want to do is come across as being insensitive. There was a brand a few weeks ago saying they sent out a newsletter to their database, and I'm sure it wasn't deliberate, but the wording, the title of the newsletter was just wrong. It was like, oh, a gift courtesy of COVID-19. It's like, COVID-19 is not a gift. So it's certainly not a gift, and I'm sure they didn't mean it in that way, but as a result they got quite a bit of backlash. So you just need to be very, very careful about the content you're putting out there, what type of content, your tone of voice. Just be very, very mindful of that. That's what I would say. But by all means, don't fall silent. I think that's possibly the worst thing, unless you have a following of millions, and even then, maintain some kind of social media presence. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and like we've got a question here from Virginia, who works for a hotel. We actually used to work together in an amazing travel PR agency. So when you aren't necessarily, you know, making money, or you're not doing very well in the offline, well, what should you be saying in your social? Like, what do your content pillars even look like?
It's really, it depends, because every brand is different. For one of my clients, they are in the hair and beauty industry. So one of the things I'm doing is I am using customer feedback and customer comments. Like there was one guy who said, it's a really simple piece of copy. You know, thanks for all the great appointments. Yeah, hopefully when this is all over, I can come back and see you soon. And I'm using things like that. So I'm still talking about the business, but I'm talking about the business in a way that is appropriate to the current environment and current situation. And I think that is the case for every single organization, every single business. You have to look for aspects of your brand or your business that are most appropriate. Because it's not, you can't just, you know, we can't just say, oh, book your appointment. You can't book an appointment because all the stores are closed, and that might come across as insensitive. So for me, what I always do is I look for, first off, I look for ways in aspects of the brand that will work well in the current environment. And what I would say is, how can you add value? Now more so than ever, it's more about selfless marketing. You know, how can you add value? How can you help people? You know, what are the things that you could, if you're a hotel brand, what are the things that you could be doing? What kind of advice and information can you be sharing that people will see as valuable?
I think
That's what I would do.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good way. Like I once heard that sometimes people can use, and I always thought this was really clever, I've never done it myself, but you can actually look at the complaints that people have had and really address them and put that same copy in a positive spin to address some of that. And it's not necessarily relevant for now, but I thought that that was interesting. And what a lot of travel brands are doing as well is really using this as like, okay, if you're getting into the mindset of the customer that really loves to travel, what is it they love, right? They love excitement, they love newness, they love, inspiration. So how do you as a brand, when you're looking at, you're like, what is it that we want to offer, and what is it that our customers would like to see from us? So you can go out and ask, as Virginia said
Yeah.
has done. And where does that meet in the Venn diagram of content? So how do we inspire them? Is it beautiful pictures that people have posted in UGC from the past, and it's just keeping their spirits up? And it's like, if we're there to inspire, let's hold that esteem up and keep that going as well. And that's just one pillar, but I think that could be quite strong from like a hotel or travel brand.
Yeah, I agree. And collaborative content creation. I think now more so than ever, user generated content is so important. It's really important to include your followers and your customers in your social conversations. Ask them what they want to see. Ask questions. Like one of my brands, what we're doing is we're putting out a story 2 or 3 times a week. Submit your grooming questions, and it might just be like, can you recommend a good beard oil or something like that? How can you add value? How can you add value to your customers and your audience, and include your audience in your conversations? Include them in your, do throwback Thursdays and repost some of their pictures on stories. I think it's really important now to be inclusive. For me, that's one of the most important things you could be, because what you want to do is build that advocacy, so that when we do eventually go back to business as usual, whatever that's going to look like, I think it's probably going to be a new normal. These people, you've been engaging with these people all along, you've been including them in the journey, you've been including them in the conversation. So I do think that it's really important to co-collaborate with your audience and ask questions, and just continuously be giving value.
Completely. And I think people really miss the word social in social media, and they kind of like all the time. And it's like, I've always said, it's like being at a house party. And if you go to the kitchen, where people tend to talk at a house party over drinks, and you're just talking about yourself, and you're like, I've got this discount, I've got this offer, and it's just all about you, that person is going to walk off. And it's the same with your customers. If it's only one way, you ain't got a conversation. It's not media, it's social media, right?
Yeah. And that's why I always say to people, they're saying, what should I do on social media? And it might sound really dumb to some people, but the clue is in the name. The first thing you should always do is be social. If you're not going to be social, then you shouldn't be in the space. And I think what I find quite frustrating, and not to criticize anyone, but I have found it with a lot of luxury brands, it's a one-way conversation. Like, they'll post, people will reply, and people will leave comments, but they don't reply to them. And it's like, but you're not being social.
What's the point?
It's a dialogue. And you have to remember as well, people don't have to follow your brand, they don't have to engage with you. They can go and follow one of your competitors, they can go and follow somebody else. They don't have to engage with your brand, they don't have to support you, they don't have to spend their money with you. They could go somewhere else. And obviously, if you have millions of followers, you can't necessarily engage with every single person. But I do think that whole social element is very, very important. And a lot of the time, brands don't do it. They'll post content and just wait for people to come to them. It's like, well, no, you should be actively going out there to other people as well, because you want their support. You want them to advocate for your brand. So if you want people to be social with you, then you need to be social with them.
Can go 2 ways. We've got another question as well. I think this is tying into the stuff we were going to talk about anyway, right? So the next question we have is from Jody, and this is a really interesting question. So Jody's asking how you personally adapt content has the same message and theme, making it relevant to the specific social platform. So it's like, because a lot of brands just push the same shit out on, not the same shit, but on every single platform, and it's just same. Is that right? Is it wrong? What are your...
I think personally, there is, again, it comes down to the specific brand. It comes down to your brand values. It comes down to your objectives. I don't necessarily think there is anything wrong at this particular moment in time, where we are quite limited. We can't just go out and create content like we normally would. I don't necessarily think that there is anything wrong with putting the same messaging, the same message out on each channel, but tailor the company. So if it's just changing a few words, because let's be realistic, we're not allowed to go outside. We can't just go outside and take pictures. We can't just go out and create video. We can't go out and create content in the way that we normally would. So if you are going to repurpose content, the same piece of content across all of your channels, maybe just edit the content slightly, change the wording, like I say, change the caption. I'm not going to sit here and say I think it's, in normal circumstances, I would say try and make content for each platform very different as you possibly can.
Yeah.
But in the current climate, that is quite tricky to do.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, you can't just go out with a photographer or a videographer and create content like you normally would. So if you are going to repurpose content, just try and tweak it and make it a little bit different from platform to platform. That's what I would advise.
And I think a really easy way to do that, like Jodie, I don't know if this helps at all, but for instance, say with this video, right, this is going to be a big piece of content because it's an hour long. And then you could, I could then also take the audio from this and turn it into a podcast, so it's slightly different again. For Instagram, I could take captions out of it that I thought were very, as the content sharer, that were inspirational, that Lisa said, and turn them into quotes for Instagram and, mock them up in Canva and put them on the platform. I could also do that for Pinterest and maybe turn them into an infographic because people like those on Pinterest. So it's really looking at what does each platform have as a business stance for you? Like, what is the relevance for it when you're looking at the business KPIs for social? Is it to engage? Is it to get people to your site? And it's really also just looking at the platform specifics. So like an Instagram story type of vertical video or picture isn't going to work for Twitter, is it, Lisa, right? So it's just looking at how you can purpose it for each platform that way as well. But just, you really can create a cycle with the same content, but just altering it, as Lisa's saying. But the rules are kind of out right now. It's just, making it differ where you can. And I think if you're a big global brand, slightly different to when you're a startup and there's only like one of you in there again.
And I think as well, what I would say, like, don't put too much pressure on yourselves. I've had a few followers contact me saying, oh, these people are doing this. I feel like I should be doing that. Ultimately, I am not in your brand. Betty is not in your brand. You have to do what is right for you. You have to do what is right for your brand. You have to do what is in line with your objectives. You have to do what is right for you. Don't feel pressurized to do what somebody else does. What works for me might not necessarily work for somebody else. So, I know it can be tricky when you're scrolling endlessly through your feed and you see something that looks amazing on somebody else's Instagram feed. But just because that is working for them, it does not mean that it's going to work for you. And just to reiterate the point I made at the beginning, we are in very unusual times. So, there is, technically speaking, there is no real right and wrong. You have to do what feels right for you and for your business. Some brands I know have taken this time not to be sharing content. They want to spend time with their families. They want to be offline. Whereas some businesses feel the need to post every day. Some businesses feel the need to post 2 or 3 times a day, repurposing content. You have to do what is right for you. If it's not right for you, don't do it. Don't just do things because you see other people doing them.
Completely. That's so relevant as well. And I think, a lot of people try to learn by what the competitors are doing, but the real true key of any of it is, what does the data say? Like, are certain formats doing way better than other formats on that platform? Maybe like something bombs on Instagram, but it does really well on LinkedIn, right? And so that's how you start to also to know for you as an individual brand or, brand or content creator, what is working. So really look at your data, and then if you want to measure that again, like benchmark it and get slightly more sophisticated, you can look at industry averages as well. There's a few different ones out there. That also gets a bit convoluted, but you can set your own KPIs by really starting to track what that data looks like and just say, well, on average we get 1.6% engagement rate, and Google what engagement rate means. We haven't really got time to go into all the nuances now, but you can really start to, because that's how we learned social, Lisa and I, was really just like tracking what it was doing for our personal brands and seeing how we could learn from it that way. And there really is a lot to be said, especially in this downtime, for what you can learn yourself without having to pay any money for anyone. But if you do, then it's there. We have another question. This is great, guys. You guys are giving us so many questions. Ange has asked, what advice would you give for building your brand as a totally new startup and use it to Instagram in particular?
Which question is that? Because I'm seeing one say, what is the platform that you recommend starting on?
She sent it to me privately, and it was for you.
What would I say? I don't that I would choose just one. I personally would, because you've got to remember as well, people consume social media in different ways. Like my mum loves Facebook.
Right.
I actually like Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who likes news. I like information. I like Instagram as well. But for me, I love Twitter. I love the immediacy of Twitter. So
Yeah.
that's my personal channel.
Mm-hmm.
First off, before you set anything up, you need to do research into your customer base, find out where are they most active. That's where you should be. That would be my advice. I think you should definitely have Instagram. You should definitely have LinkedIn. You should definitely have Facebook. You should definitely have Twitter. For me, those are the key ones. And
Yeah.
they all do different things and they all have different kinds of people following them. But I would say before you set anything up, find out where your customer is, because
Yeah.
wherever your customer is where you should be. I think sometimes people will just go and set channels up. And I get that. You want to have a presence in as many places as possible. But if your customer, like Instagram, for example, every man and his dog is on Instagram. But if your customers are not there, there is an argument to say, well, should you be on that channel? If your customers aren't on Instagram, why are you on Instagram?
Yeah.
If your customers aren't on LinkedIn, then why are you on LinkedIn? You have to do what is right for your business. I think the mistake that some brands make is that, social is there to support your business. Your business is not there to support social. And as much as pretty pictures and all that kind of stuff, all that stuff is well and good, but ultimately you are a business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're as a private individual, like on my own personal account, I post what I want when I want. On my social word account, obviously I don't post pictures of myself with my mom and my sister, because that's not what that's for. So I think the most important thing is find out where your customers and your audience are, and that is where your presence should be.
Mm-hmm.
Never, don't fall into the trap of thinking, as I said before, don't fall into the trap of thinking that your business is there to support your social media. It is not. You have a lot of people who are Instagram stars and all that kind of, that's all well and good, but likes don't always necessarily translate to pounds and pence. So just bear that in mind. You need to always be where your customer is. That is the most important thing.
And I think that really comes back to understanding what your brand is doing, what your mission is, what your vision is, and who your customer is. And once you think you know who your customer is, you can even say, okay, so for me, for Hstl&Hrt, my customer, it tends to be a woman, and she's from around 25 to 45. So I would look therefore on the platforms where that woman exists, and then she might have certain values or interests, right? So for a lot of the time for Hstl&Hrt, our customers tend to be interested in well-being, mental health, and business. So it's like, well, where does that sit across what platform? And you can really use that to test as well. And I think that speaks to Letitia's platform question as well. Like if you're really starting out, you can choose a few of them and you can see what you personally like, but it depends on if you're doing it for business or pleasure, right? If you're doing it for your customer, I think everything Lisa has already said is apparent there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, data. I cannot stress this enough. I know data is not the most exciting things, it's not the most interesting, but data is when it comes to social media, data is your best friend. I always used to say to my team when I worked at Harrods, people can argue with opinions, they can argue they can't argue with facts and figures.
It's true.
They can't argue with figures. If a piece of content is if the data is showing that one piece of content performs better than another, that's also what you should be basing your strategy on. A lot of people will just post. I'm always amazed at the amount of people who don't mind their data and their insights. Your data should be your absolute best friend when it comes to social media, without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm not somebody, by my own admission, I used to hate data. I hate figures, anything like that. I'm more of a creative person. But then when I saw the value in actually mining my data and being able to go back to the board and say, look, I want more budget to create this kind of content because this is what performed well. You can't argue with that. So always, 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 always refer back to your data. I check data every single day. And it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is fundamental to the success of your social media.
And you really can learn how to look at the data for free as well. Like you can go into Facebook Insights, you can go into Instagram Insights. If you don't know how to do that, there's YouTube videos that teach you. It's literally how we learned it all, right? Or like if you need coaching on it, Lisa can help you with that as well. But it's really just like while you've got this time, use it to really understand. Like Facebook's got, is it Facebook Blueprint, which is a free, like a shit ton of free resource where you can go and look at what data you should be looking at and how do you look at it and how do you know what matters. And you know, even just on every post on the insights, it's straight under there, isn't it, Lisa? Like it's like, oh, for this I know that I got this reach and this many engagements, and for this I got this and this, and you just really start to look at what is working. But if you're not using that data and you're just pushing like stuff out into the ether without really looking at the impact, you're not doing it strategically, and you might as well not be on social at all. You might as well not bother, to be quite frank.
I agree. I agree. It's like again, being social firstly and mining your data, being where your customer is. You know, if you're not doing these things, then really it's pointless you being on social media. It really, really is. And I know that's probably a bit of a strong statement, but use these platforms in the way that they are supposed to be used. You know, there is a ton of free insights out there. There's a ton of free data that you can be mining. And like I say, don't be afraid to test. You know, now is as good a time as any to test different kinds of content. And when you think about it realistically, every piece of content that you put out is a test. Nobody knows how anything, truly knows how anything is going to perform until it is published. So, you know, test different things. Don't be afraid to try a piece of content. Not everything you do and not everything about your business is going to be of interest to the outside world. It's as simple as that. You know, not everything we did when I worked at Harrods was of interest. You know, if you post a pic, you know, we used to post a picture of a cupcake, it would get 10,000 likes. But then a piece of content that we'd spend weeks and weeks working on, getting approvals for, didn't even get half that. You know, that is just the nature of social media. So don't be afraid to test. Don't be afraid of, oh, if this doesn't get X amount of likes, I'm going to delete it. The whole point is you put different stuff out there. Some stuff will work and some stuff won't. That is just the way it is. But don't let that stop you from testing different kinds of content, especially now when you literally potentially have the world as your audience. You know, when have we ever been in a time when pretty much most of the planet is at home and they're pretty much on one of these? So, you know, use that time and use this as an opportunity to test different kinds of content, see what works, see what doesn't. Don't be afraid not to try.
And I think that really speaks to Anja's question as well. Not Anj, sorry, Rosanna's question about if your client's on Instagram and Facebook and doing different content. It's kind of what we already addressed. It's not ideal to be posting the same content on every platform, but so I have two things like Lisa. I don't know if you agree with this. If you don't have a big budget or a big team or a lot of hours, it's not illegal, right, Rosanna? It's not illegal to post on Facebook and Instagram, same thing. But what you can do is just be like, okay, cool. We're going to try this, and this on Facebook and Instagram. And we're going to see how well a video did on Instagram, the same video, Instagram versus Facebook. Can you guys hear that trumpet in the background?
Yeah, I heard it.
I'm at the window. Sorry, there's a boy who practices his trumpet and he's so bad. One sec. Can you not?
I think in terms of the question, it's on Instagram, Facebook. In an ideal world, yes, I would say post different content. But as we said earlier, we're not in an ideal world. We're in a very unusual situation. So if anything, if you do need to repurpose the same type of content across all the channels, maybe just try to tweak it a little bit, tweak the caption a little bit, maybe ask a question. You know, we're in unusual times. And like Betty was saying before, you know, you might not have a massive budget. It might be you doing everything yourself. You know, you have to take those things into account as well. What is achievable? You know, in an ideal world, I would be posting a different piece of content every single day on every single channel for every different client. But it's not always possible to do that. You have to have budget to do that. You have to have resource. You have to have equipment. You have to have time. You know, we don't all have those things. We're not all big organizations, and even some big organizations don't have all of that. So, you know, just really look at the content that you have within your arsenal and use it accordingly. If you have to repurpose something across different channels, then do so. but just tweak it a little bit. That's what I would say. There's
Yeah.
enough stress in the world at the moment. You know, don't put yourself under any additional stress.
And social
If we can.
media doesn't have to be like that hard either. Like some of the big brands I have freelanced for, they only post 3 to 4 times a week because for them that is what worked. And there used to be this thing, like I know there's a big in Australia there's a brand called Showpo and they're a fashion retailer and they post like 3 or 4 times a day, and that worked for them. And then when I was in the UK heading up New Look, social fashion retailer again, it was like 3 or 4 times a day on everything. But for other brands that I do, it's 3 or 4 times a week. Some was like once a week, and they would put money behind it because then the rules change again when you have big advertising budget, right? Like some people just they do treat it as a media play, and that's not to say that it's wrong either. It is more media than social media, but it really just depends on you, your budgets, the business objectives as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, I think what people forget is there are a lot of things that come into play when it comes to social media. You know, when I worked in Harrods, I had a team, I had budgets, I had access to designers, photographers, stylists, creative directors. I don't have that now. I have me. And
Yeah.
sometimes one or two other people if I'm lucky. I don't so that is going to have an impact on what content you create, how much content you create, when you can do it. You know, it's unrealistic for me to think, right, I'm going to be able to do things exactly as I did them in my previous job. I'm not. It's as simple as that. I can't. I don't have the manpower. I don't have the money. I just don't have access to that sort of team. And those kind of resources. And you have to take those things into consideration. Yeah, you can be creative. You can be, your creativity won't, my creativity hasn't shrunk, but access to resource has. So that plays a part in what I can do. And you will have limitations. When you're a small business, you have limitations. It's as simple as that. What, because often you're everything. You're your own PA, you're your own CEO, you're your own copywriter, your own photographer, your own content creator. You know, you have those things have to be taken into consideration as well. You can only do so much.
Yeah.
So choose what to do and do it wise and do it to the best of your ability, but don't get too hung up on, oh, I need to be doing this on Facebook and doing this on Instagram and doing this on Twitter, especially now. You know, do what you can in the best way that you can do it. That's what I would advise.
Yeah, totally. And like I think right now it's a really great time to experiment and not put too much pressure on it and just see how you go. I think we've got quite an interesting question from Glenn who says, when it comes to like luxury brands, who do you think is doing social well? Do you have like 1 or 2 examples aside from Harrods?
I don't really actually. I don't.
Commercial.
No, not because they're not doing it well. I don't really. I think it's not fair. I think what a lot of people do is compare themselves to maybe a luxury brand or a bigger brand. And you have to remember, like what we were just saying, they have bigger budgets. They have more people, you know, they have more resource. I think there are a lot of brands. I do think there are a lot of brands that do their social media really well. I think I've always really liked Gucci. I love Burberry, especially Burberry in the early days. They would really, I mean, I'm sure you remember Betty when they did the tweet war.
Oh,
And like, I just love how they would push the boundaries. If I'm being completely honest, whilst I think there are brands out there that do it really well, do I think that there are any brands out there who are really pushing the envelope? No, I don't. And that's not to be disparaging or disrespectful to anyone. It's very rare now that I see content that makes me stop scrolling. I'm sure other people would say the same, you know, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. What can you do? How can you get people to stop scrolling? My favorite account is not a luxury brand. It's Humans of New York.
yes.
And that's because, you know, it's about people, which is fundamentally what social is. It's about a connection, and it's about, you know, emotions and experiences that we've all been through at some point in our lives. For me, that's my absolute favorite social media. That does exactly, for me, that is the epitome of social media. And it's not to say that brands aren't doing it well, or they're doing well or they're doing badly. Some brands don't necessarily use social in the way that it's meant to be used. And I always use Humans of New York as a great example. Obviously, that does not necessarily translate to a retailer, but there are aspects of it, like there are aspects of it that you can pull out and apply to your own social media strategy. So in terms of, to go back specifically to luxury brands, I think there are quite a few luxury brands who do it very well from a visual point of view, from a storytelling point of view. I think Louis Vuitton, sometimes some of the stories the campaigns that they share are incredible in terms of the storytelling and taking people on a journey. But I think right now social media needs to be more there needs to be more of that human element to it. There needs to be more of that kind of adding value. I think for me, that's the most important thing right now. And for me, the brands who do that will be the brands who are the best at social media, adapting to the current climate and the current situation.
Yeah, I think the ones as well that co-create with their customers, like they take it one step further and they've built their community, and then they build the conversation, then they build the community, and that in turn turns to commerce. And for me,
Exactly.
right, and they're not necessarily this brand isn't necessarily great at social, but they're great at community, and it's Glossier, and they
Yeah.
are a beauty brand, and they actually co-create products with their community. And so like half the products that come out have been co-created with the people that they're meant for. And I think that that's really interesting. So for instance, if like you were a hotel brand and you were like, okay, we have got another $1 billion investment because your life is that great. And then you're like, okay, what can we do here? Something really cool would be, how do we use social media as innovation within the business? And it's like, let's open a new set of rooms, but let's design them with the customer base. Let's design the theme of it, like all of that. And like, we'll have polls on things. We'll get people to really sort of invent the wheel with us. And it's when you really do that with your customers, because never before social media did you have this amount of access and proximity to your customers, and the same with you. And a lot of people are scared of it, but actually it's free research, it's free innovation, it's free customer loyalty in a way that they don't even want anything from you. Sometimes they just want to be included, and they've been ignored for so long. And the most you see, I don't know about you, Lisa, but in my days of customer management on social media, a lot of the times it like people really uproar is when they're being ignored, because people don't like to be ignored. Who does? So it's not just about replying to them, making people feel seen, because we're humans and we like to feel seen. Get them included in your business plan and rewrite your business plan so there's an element of that your customers are literally feeding into it. Because I'm telling you, with that possibility, your profits that soar, like Glossier has proven the model. So there they are, GLOSSIER, for anyone that wants to look them up. And they to me are really the pinnacle of how you do commerce in the social media realm anyway.
One luxury brand I will mention that I'm really think is quite interesting is Selfridges. So it's been interesting to see how all brands, not just luxury brands, have changed their comms in light of the coronavirus. And I really like the fact that they've really made it about, they do this thing called kindness challenge, which I really, really like. And I think I did a post about it on Social Word. I like the fact that they have they're not just sell. There are other brands who shall remain nameless, because I'm not here to name and shame people, who are focusing purely on buy this product. And at a time when people are losing their jobs, they have less access to money and to finance. It's really good to see a brand like Selfridges actually doing something that isn't necessarily about money. Because I'm thinking, you know what, when all of this is over and I can afford to go and shop in Selfridges, I will be going to shop in Selfridges because of what they're doing on their social media. I like the fact that they're being very inclusive, and they're actually giving back in terms of doing kindness challenges. They're really, it almost feels like, to a degree, that they're not they're considering the mental health or mental wealth, if you like, of their audience. And I think that's a really good thing to be doing in this current climate. So I think Selfridges, is one luxury brand for me that is really standing out at the moment.
They've always been quite amazing at doing what they're doing. Like, obviously they always want to be Harrods, right? But but on by the by, but I think, like, what is that phrase? It's like, I'm going to rephrase this phrase, but it's not, people won't remember the product you're selling. They'll remember how you made them feel. And really, social media is brand brand is literally translates as the feeling that you leave people with. And social media is a key way that you really, it's the emotions behind it. And social media really is about the psychology of it as well. It's like, what do people want in your category? In like with, so say Selfridges is retail, why do people go shopping? A lot of the time it's distraction, it's to feel better, or it's for community, to go with their friends. You tap into those three things and you really start to see a set of behaviors that really then align with values, consumer behavior, and just really then how do you tap into that with the different touch points in social media, evoking the same feelings through comms, because you can't touch them physically, but you can touch them with feelings and videos. That's why everyone goes bloody crazy for John Lewis every Christmas, because of the videos that they release. Like you're not in that experience, but you are in that experience when you watch it. And
that's the thing. And I think what a lot of people, you know, in their desire to push out a really cool image or a really cool video, people forget that there is social media is basically psychology. It is how what makes people tick. Why do people love this content over that content? It's building an emotional connection with people, and that's not as hard to do as people would think. I think that's why Humans of New York has been as successful as it has become, because it's about the things that we all experience. Everybody feels joy, everybody feels pain, everybody feels sorrow. We all feel these things at some point or other in our lives, and he has been very good at tapping into that in a very simple way. And that's another thing as well. For me, I'm a big believer in simplicity. I can't remember which artist it was, whether it was Da Vinci or Michelangelo. I think it was Da Vinci who said simplicity is the art of sophistication, or something like that. And it's so true. So many times people will sit around a table and try and brainstorm and come up with the cleverest ideas, and sometimes it's the most simple things that are the most effective. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to be too clever. Sometimes it is the simplest tactics that have the biggest impact.
Totally. Make them laugh or make them cry. Just make them feel, right? Make them feel.
And exactly. Another thing I always tell people is that I am a firm believer in the 3 E's when it comes to social media. I believe that content first off, you need to engage, you need to educate, and you need to entertain. I think if you are not doing those 3 things, then again, you're in the wrong space. So it's especially now more so than ever, engagement, entertainment, and education in social media are so important. It's so important, and it's a key way of adding value. Your content should be doing things for people. Some way, shape, or form, not just, oh, here's my product, please buy it. Here's my course, please sign up to it. What is your content doing for people?
Yeah. And that's like, we on Hstl&Hrt, like we're a super small team, right? There's only 2 of us or 3 of us at sometimes, but like when I'm doing the social, I'm still learning, and sometimes we post memes to make people laugh, and then we'll boost it and link people back to the coaching page, or like, I'll see that like there's really cute graphics that are doing really well on Insta, and I'm like, well, if I know that graphics are a trend, like these funny pie charts and different illustrations, I'm not an illustrator, but I can do something. How can I tap into that so it's relevant for my brand, and just play on some of the trends that are unique for you as well? And I think like as well, like Ash has asked how, when you're working with influencers and you're looking at influencers for your brand, who's worth investing in? I think Lisa, doesn't it sit the same as you've got to know who your customer is? And for me, it was always like the influencers need to represent who your customers are, but who they aspire to be as well, right?
And as well, they have to be a believer in your product. One of my biggest bugbears is that, and it doesn't happen so much now, but in the earlier days of influencer marketing, it definitely happened. 1 minute they're advertising this, and then they love that, and then they're pushing this. It's like, you're not genuine. You're not a genuine believer in this brand. You're not a believer in their product. You're clearly just being paid to talk about their products. If you are going to work with influencers, work with people who are passionate about your brand. It isn't just about a paycheck. There are approach to promote things. I don't promote things because that's not really what I do. And if I don't believe in it, then I'm not going to promote it. If I don't like a brand offer to send me some products, like, oh, we'd love it if you post about it. Like, to be honest, I don't buy your products. I've never talked about your products online, So, you know, with the greatest respect, I'm not going to accept it, because then that's not authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not, how odd would it be if I suddenly started talking about, oh, look at this, isn't this great? I've never done that, so I'm not going to start doing it now. And I think that's the thing for me with influencers. Find people, work with people who are in line with your brand values and who actually are supportive of your brand, and who would actually invest in your product even if you weren't paying them to do so. You know, I think for me, authenticity is so important. The second I see an influencer posting one thing today and then posting another thing tomorrow and then posting something after, they lose my interest completely. They
Yeah.
lose my interest. They lose my support. I hit the unfollow button straight away.
It's just vapid, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
the issue is that a lot for me, like I do a lot of influencer work with the brands that I work with, and what I see is that yes, they absolutely need to represent your brand values, but they really need to be a personification of your customer. Because if your customer is like looking at certain things, it's almost like when you're considering your customer persona, right? So for Hstl&Hrt, she's very much, let's take one of them, she's a woman in business. So I know she's probably reading Forbes. I know she's following like people like Sarah Blakely, who followed Spanx. I know that then Sarah Blakely could be an influencer of her. So if I had a big budget, I can work with someone like that. On a micro trend, I would look at platforms like Tribe, and I would look at maybe someone with 8,000 followers that has their own business that could influence someone like my customer. And then really what you're doing is, by knowing your customer segmentation, you start to build them out based on that. So it's like your customer for where they are right now, but the customer for the aspiration of it. Because not only do people want to feel stuff with your brand, they also want to be inspired by it, which then speaks to what Glenn's saying. But I've talked about aspiration and inclusivity, and that can be hard, I think, for luxury, but it's not, because within the exclusivity and the aspiration, you've got your level that can already reach that, but the level that want to reach that, and you can't forget their level that want to reach that. And I think a lot of luxury brands do.
Yeah, that's so important. Like, so one of my things was, when I worked at Harrods, is, you know, luxury has always, historically, luxury has always, oh, you must be wealthy, you must be, you must have a certain amount of money. For me, my attitude was, regardless of your level of luxury, Harrods can cater for you. So if you have £5 to spend, you can go in and buy a cupcake. If you have £50,000 to spend, you can go in and buy something else. You know, regardless of the level of luxury, regardless of your financial situation, everybody has their own level of luxury. You know, I think this idea that luxury is attached just to purely, you know, having a lot of money, I think that's kind of been blown out of the water now. I think regardless of your level of luxury brands can cater for you. It's just, how do you deliver that message but maintain your brand image, which is a difficult thing for luxury brands. I don't think it's impossible, but you know, you do want to attract that the upper echelons, in terms of, you know, people who have bigger budgets and deeper pockets, but you also want to attract those aspirational people who aspire to actually one day maybe afford a Burberry trench, which they can't afford right now. I do think it's a challenge for luxury brands, but I don't think it's impossible. I also don't think that they do as much work around that area as they should, but it, you know, obviously it's not that straightforward. And right now, you know, maybe is not the time to be kind of deep diving into that. There are bigger issues going on at the moment.
Yeah, I put myself on mute because I was just saying some more stuff to Ash about influencers. So I was going and listening to what you were saying. And like when it comes to, because we only have 5 minutes left, I think we may not have many more questions that we can answer. Maybe one, if there's somebody else that hasn't asked a question, we can take one more question. But really, what do you think are the top things that people can do right now? Like, what are the quick wins, right?
What are the quick wins is again, it goes back to adding value. What can you do for people? You know, it's more about, you know, I have this thing where, you know, think more we, less me. What can you do for others? How can you add value? You know, that's what it's all about at the moment. You know, people aren't necessarily thinking about, oh, I want to buy this and I want to buy that. There are a lot of people out there who are, to be perfectly frank, feeling like shit.
Yeah.
Then, you know, this is a very unusual situation for us all to be in. So for me, I think the key thing now is, how can you add value? How can you help people?
Yeah.
You know, that for me is, and it's not necessarily about quick wins. Think long term. What are the short term things that you can implement now that are going to help you long term? And for me, the most important thing is adding value, is
Mhm.
how can you help? Think we rather than me. That is the best approach for social media right now. If you're going out there and you're trying to push your product on people, don't be surprised if you don't have a lot of success.
Yeah.
But if you're going out there and you're asking people, like I put something up on my social word account today saying, how can I help?
Yeah.
You know, and it's as simple as that, you know. And I think regardless of what that value adding looks like, that's what you should be focusing on, because that's what's going to build advocacy, that's what's going to build loyalty. A lot of people are taking note of the brands who are helping people and who are not. A
Mhm.
lot of people are taking note, and it will be interesting to see once all of this pans out and is over and we've moved on, how some certain brands do in terms of support from customers and from their audiences. So if there's anything I say that you should be doing now, is thinking about how you can add value, how you can help your audience, how you can help your customers, because long term that is what will pay dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like sometimes it could be as simple as like if you go back to Virginia and the fact that she works for a hotel brand, right? We all know that you're probably not going to stay in a hotel anytime soon, but maybe you can run a competition for someone to win a future luxury stay, because it gives like the one thing that we have right now is looking forward to a future where this doesn't exist and that it will come. And so if that person knows that they're going to say, I'm going to make an assumption here, Virginia, and say that perhaps it's a five-star hotel in London, I don't know, and maybe like if I win a five-star like all expenses weekend pay trip, honey, right now I'd be like, oh shit, fuck you Corona, I can get through this. Like it's like, how do you offer value in a way of inspiring people? And is it telling the story of like, go back to your roots, tell people, you know, how you came about, really look at storytelling through a humanized approach as well. Like look at like what I like Nike, for instance, like the way that they win as well, Lisa, right, is by that almost like that human storytelling of, you know, inspiration. And if you're a brand that has heritage, for instance, you can use ways that you've overcome uncertainty in the past as well to, you know, say together we are in this, you are literally not alone, we're here for you.
Yeah,
You could
exactly.
ask your customers what they want from you. Like, is there a way that we can help you right now? Is there like inspirational stories that you want to hear from famous travelers? So if you're a hotel and travel and inspiration are, you know, one of your values and like you're in the business, get inspirational travelers to do, you know, digital nomads who've seen amazing things to talk about like their desert island discs. Think of yourself as a podcast or a radio show and really go after that entertainment, because I swear to God, you entertain people right now, they're going to come at you with their money when this is over. It's all about storytelling and evoking feeling.
And as well, tell story. If you are a business consisting of 2 or 3 people, now's a good time to tell people, look at the people in your company. Can you tell stories about them? Can
Yeah.
you know, what are they doing in all this downtime? You know, be really creative. Think about people, think about what you know, think, go back to like basic human emotions: love, joy, hate, happiness, sadness. You know, tap into these things in an appropriate way, of course, but you know, tell the story behind your business, tell the story of the individuals behind your business, people who wouldn't usually be, you wouldn't put front center stage. Maybe it's time to kind of give people an insight into the human side of your business. That's another great way of doing it. You know,
Yeah.
there are, it's about, you know, as much as we are in very unfortunate times, it's also an opportunity to get really creative
Yeah.
and try different things and really do different things, you know, do things differently. Now you've got more opportunity to do that now than ever before, so just try it, just put things out there and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think on that note, it is 1 minute over, guys. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you being here with us, even you guys that didn't ask questions. I'm hoping that you all learned something. We will send you a follow-up email all about Hstl&Hrt and the coaches that we have. We have lifestyle coaches, business coaches, everyone that you can need. And Lisa is one of our amazing social media coaches. So if you need to book sessions with her, you can do that in the link that we're going to send you afterwards. Really appreciate your time. I hope you do very well. Stay safe, everyone. And thank you very, very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye. I don't know. I'm going to stop the recording now.